Alright, Anna's gonna put the warm-up up on. I know the bottom. My handwriting's not pretty good. I guess I remember. Oh, wait, what? This was me? This is estimate.
Can I spell independent? I don't know.
E-E-N-D.
What? That's what I had.
E-N-T.
Yeah. Really bad at spelling.
It's okay, I do it every time that word too. Alright. I did.
Oh my god. No. That's me.
Just made you like self-conscious.
Yeah, seriously, it'd be my fault if she misspelled it. So I just asked for the general formula, which is your estimate plus or minus the margin of error. Today, we're going to focus on proportions. So our confidence interval, our estimate we use is p hat. And our margin of error comes from our z star times the standard error, which would be p hat times 1 minus p hat divided by n square rooted. This is a parenthesis. I don't know why it's so straight. There we go. Next week, we'll spend 2 days with proportions, then we'll move on to means. So next week, we'll work with means. Yeah, I'll write the mean one down next week. I don't want to confuse you today.
Look what I found.
Thank you. I don't know where I put my extra copies, so. Where did I put my extra copies? I just put them upside down. That's fine.
We got undercover bugs.
All right. So.
How's your chest? I know. You look like you're from the Bay Area.
Today, we start our 4-step process. It will become something we do. Sam.
Sam, I'd really appreciate if you did do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. All right. 4 steps. State, plan, do, conclude. So on your free response questions for this unit, you better have your 4 steps. I will show you. We'll work through it. You can see the examples I have it. State, plan, do, conclude. State, plan, do, conclude. On the state part, you state what parameter you want to estimate and at what confidence level. For the plan, you identify the appropriate method for inference and you check your conditions. So this part here, that's going to be a calculator function, although I did show you how to do it by hand, but today I'll show you the calculator function. That's the formula on the front, the p hat plus or minus z star times the standard error. for our PHAP. Check conditions. Those are what Anna reminded us of on the warm-up. Random, normal, independent. You check those conditions in the plan part. Do, that's where you do the math. And then conclusion, you interpret it in context.
What's the random normal
Independent. Those are our 3 conditions. All right, so we're going to look at our first one. Anybody need a calculator before we get too far into this? You're welcome, Eric.
That was so
You're welcome. All right. Will somebody read for me? Because my voice sucks. Thanks, Maddie.
Suppose you're interested in finding out the proportion of the population at NMHS that's seen. What is that word? Thank you.
Maya, apparently you guys have not seen the video.
No. He contacts an SRS of 100 students in the school. Of these 100 students, 23 reporting seeing Maya He, 95% confidence interval. Okay.
All right, well, Maya, you guys haven't.
Oh, that's not how you spell it.
How do you spell it?
There's no way that's how you spell it.
It is Myahe.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Thank you.
Are we watching it?
Thank you.
Well, what is Maya? Yeah, it's that guy.
This is the original TikTok.
It is.
Oh, let's watch that.
Wait, is there another one? There's another one.
Hey, what do you think? Like,
Come on.
no,
Yes.
Let it play for the
No, come on.
Chocolate.
no,
Please.
no.
No, you're times.
It's the same video. just ridiculous. No. Math. Back to math.
Grace away from my.
It is weird. I'm surprised you guys didn't know that.
I do.
Okay. Now it's going to be stuck in your head for the rest of the day.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. I what?
I would spell it. Doesn't sound
Yahi.
I think you guys are too stuck on spelling and not enough on the video and the math. Who cares how it's spelled?
Where's my?
It is made up. Of course it's made up.
I'll bring this back. I have promise.
Math?
It's not real.
Say my.
We'll get into this after the notes, Hannah. All right. So, Maddie read this for us. We're going to talk without being difficult here. We're going to find a 95% confidence interval. We want to find out the proportion of the population at NMHS that has seen the video. So the state part, what parameter are we estimating and at what confidence level? So it's a statement. You guys, I'm sure, can put this in better grammar than me. But I say something like, we want to estimate the true proportion, or you could say actual proportion. True is shorter, that's why I go with it. Of NMHS students. And I just made the true proportion bigger by showing all of you that video. Who have seen Maya He? Do any of you know Kika Stone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so he took this class when he was a senior, and then we started talking about his YouTube videos. And every year I think, oh, I should switch it to Kika's YouTube videos.
He has like a beatboxing video on there. So
Oh my
He
God.
does. He
Watch
does.
it. YouTube has like beatbox.
Oh yeah.
I remember that one.
He looks so young in that beatboxing video too.
He's like 14 or something.
Yeah. I need to zoom out so you can see that. So I stated my parameter. I gave the confidence level. So I said at 95% confidence. Any questions so far? So then plan, we state the calculator function and we check our conditions. The calculator function, we're working with one proportion and we want to make a confidence interval. So it's called a one prop, that's short for proportion. Z, because we're working with proportions, so we use Z star, not T star. Int stands for interval. One prop Z int. I'll show you how to get there in a minute. But that's the calculator function. Do you have a question? Okay. So then we need to check our three conditions. First one is random, which I'm going to abbreviate as R. I told you most of the time this one's given in the problem. So right here it tells us we looked at an SRS of 100 students. So I'm just going to quote it, SRS of 100. I didn't want to end my quote quite yet, sorry. than normal. We're working with proportions, so what do we check for normal?
NP, or n times p is greater than or equal to 10, and n times 1 minus p is greater than or equal to 10.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Because she knew I was looking directly at her. I knew she would tell me. N times p has to be greater than or equal to 10. N times 1 minus p is also greater than or equal to 10.
How come it's 10? Just like, this is how it is?
Yeah, it's actually quite arbitrary. If you think back to the binomial setting, it had to do with the number of successes and number of failures. And if you have less than 10 successes and 10 failures, it's too small of a sample. And so I don't know how to say it. So you need to have a bigger sample. And that's really what it's proving, is your sample size is big enough. Now, this one, there's two ways we can look at it. N times p, the actual number, is given in the problem, in the paragraph. So it tells us of the 100 students, 23 report seeing it. And I just talked about how this goes back to the binomial setting, and this represents success, the number of successes, and the other one represents the number of failures. Well, in this case, if they've seen the video, that's considered a success. So 23 from my sample have seen the video, and 23 is bigger than 10. If 23 have seen the video, how many have not? There's 100 in the sample. 77. So this would be 77. Both are bigger than 10, so normal is met. Then our last one, independent. Anybody remember what we have to check there? Maddie,
What?
you told me this yesterday.
Yeah, I know.
So what is it?
That it's no more than 10% of the population.
Yeah, sample size has to be less than or equal to 1/10 of the population. Stop distracting Molly.
I'm sorry.
Gosh. So our sample size is 100. So if I multiply both sides by 10, that gets rid of the 1/10, right? And 10 times 100 is 1,000. And our population is North Medford students. Are there more than 1,000 of you? Yeah. I don't know the exact number this year, but it's 1,600. So all of our conditions are met. Now, on the do part, I said perform the calculations. It is a calculator function. But if you're going to take the AP exam and you want to get full credit, you need to put more than just the calculator function and the answer. So I'm going to teach you guys to do it that way. First thing, we need to actually have our estimate, so our p-hat. There are 23 out of the 100, which is 0.23. So our p-hat is 0.23. Which, if you didn't like that I just pulled 23 from the problem up here, n times p would be 0.23 times 100, which is where we got 23. Then you'd have 100 times 1 minus 0.23, which would give you the 77. You also need to identify your z-star. We're working at 95% confidence. Anybody happen to remember that z-star?
1.96.
1.96. I suggest that you just memorize that number. 95% seems to be one of the most common. But if you just plain forgot it, you do know how to find it using inverse norm. Remember, you have to add one of the tails. So we would have 0.975 for our area, 0 for the mean, 1 for the standard deviation. And you would get 1.96. Or you can just memorize that one. Or you can use the table in the back of the book, because they give the tables on the AP exam as well.
So the mean and standard deviation for finding these stars is never going to change, right? It's going to stay 0 and 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you should also have your standard error, which I'm going to do off to the side. I'll put the answer here. Standard error is your standard deviation of your p hat. So if I show the work over here, that comes from the square root of p hat times 1 minus p hat divided by n. P hat is 0.23, which means 1 minus p hat is 0.77. And then I would divide by 100 and square root that. So I get 0.042. And our confidence interval would come from our estimate, p hat, plus or minus the margin of error, which is z star, times our standard error of p hat. Now, the calculator does do it for you, but you should be able to identify all these things. Especially if you're taking the AP exam. If you just put a confidence interval without any of this information, you won't get credit. Yes, ma'am? Say that louder, please. It depends on the college you end up going to. Some colleges think they're too good for SOU credit to transfer. I know, right? No. Usually within state they're pretty good. Although, and this could have changed, Willamette didn't used to accept SOU credit. And that's in Salem.
It's pretentious.
But depending on whether you get a 3, 4, or 5 on the AP exam, some colleges will award more credit based on your score on the AP exam. So you might get like 4 credits for a score of a 3, which is passing. A score of a 4, they might give you 8 credits. I've heard with like Spanish that if you get a 5 on the AP Spanish exam, you can get like 16 credits. So it depends on the college, really.
But like if you don't do the AP exam and you just have the SAT credits and transfers, that's just 4 credits?
Right, depending on the college. There are some colleges that think they're too good for SOU credit. So, but usually within state, it's okay. All right, you guys ready to learn how to do this on your calculator? You're going to hit stat, go over to tests, and we're going to look for 1 prop z int, which you have to scroll all the way down. A, 1 prop z int. And then we hit enter. 1 Prop Z int.
Oh,
Stat tests. Don't do 1 Prop Z test. That's next chapter. Right now we're at 1 Prop Z int. Not 2 Prop, that's 2 chapters away. Then it'll ask you information. X is the number of successes. So 23 kids had seen the video. N is your sample size, so 100. And then your confidence level usually defaults to 95%. If it's not the confidence level you want, notice you have to put it as a decimal. Okay, you can't put 95 in there, it'll get mad. So then it gives me my confidence interval. It goes from 0.1475 to 0.3125. Yeah, but you wouldn't appreciate this if I didn't show you it the other way.
Should explain the steps one more time.
Stat
Stat.
tests. 1 Prop Z int A.
What number?
Oh,
A.
Um,
It's not a number. It's A.
So we did all that work last.
Yeah. You wouldn't appreciate
That's
this
true.
if
I
I
do
just.
really appreciate it.
Yeah. It makes your life easier, right?
Yeah, so much easier.
What's sad?
I don't even remember when you last class.
What about?
Yeah.
That's
Why is it sad that he got his hair?
Because there was a picture
never mind.
Oh. Did you leave anything on top? Yeah. So we're good. He's bald. All right.
I'm just lying.
Yeah.
And now,
How'd she get me?
I don't know. I hate this.
I'm just so
I'm upset.
I'm mad at you
I'm
now.
upset. I'm upset.
Now we're gonna write our conclusion, which I already taught you guys. Okay? We are 95% confident that the interval, and then give your interval, captures the true proportion of North students who have seen Maya He. Maya He, Maya, Maya. Doesn't help that my voice is horrid. Down at the bottom, I did put an exam tip, although it's true for my tests as well, and your homework. If you see the words construct and interpret, you better do 4 steps. State, plan, do, conclude. Say that again.
This is just a lot of people for homework.
No, it's not. State what you want to do, check your conditions, do it, and then write a conclusion. You just wait till we get to chapter 10. Our conclusions are novels.
For novels?
Writing novels?
Oh my
I don't have
god.
time right now. What?
I do consider myself a writer.
You know, kids always complain, but I teach it. It's very much sentence frames, And you know what? When the kids take the AP exam, they go, oh my goodness, thank you. Because a lot of times they'll give you a conclusion and they'll ask you to find the error in the conclusion. And because I spend so much time on conclusions, they know what to do.
Well, what's the point of getting like the standard deviation of p hat and like z star and all that
I don't
if we
know.
didn't have to like for the answer of the question?
I don't see the point.
Because that tells me you understand what the calculator is telling you
So if we didn't have the calculator, we'd have to do that and like.
by hand.
Oh my god.
So do we still need to know that stuff though, like on the test?
And you'll see in a minute, we're going to mess with the formula.
Don't mess with the formula. There's too many
Okay, well,
formulas.
we're not going to mess with the formula. It's the same formula. We're just going to solve for a different piece of the formula.
Oh,
So you guys are going to, if I could speak, you guys are going to do your first four-step problem. State, plan, do, conclude. The situation is that we're interested in finding out the proportion of the U.S. population that classifies themselves as Democrats. We contact an SRS of 500 people. Of these 500 people, 210 state that they are Democrats. Find a 99% confidence interval. 99. Why did I switch it up? Because it's not always 95, and you guys know how to find your Z-star. I know. No, hopefully I don't die in the process.
Does this say you truck?
Yeah. And us being a wee bit grumpy about this.
Do we have that
I
at the
don't love
tail?
this.
You don't love this? But I gave you Hershey Kisses yesterday.
I
Yeah.
liked yesterday.
I should still have some.
We didn't have his classes.
Whatever. The other day, you weren't here for the Hershey Kisses.
And then talk about my deck.
Oh, I thought you were gonna get there.
I know, so did I.
Wow.
You're so sweet.
How'd you get those?
Because
Because I like Anna. Eric only gets one.
No, he's on that cut. He doesn't get any. Don't eat those, Eric.
Yeah, you're right.
He's on that cut. I'm training him.
You're not treating.
But I would definitely.
Ignore him. 2 Hershey Kisses is not
Do
going to
not
ruin
eat that.
anything.
You're gonna ruin the cut.
It
Let's
is
listen to
not
him too.
going to ruin anything.
It's a gateway
You
drug.
should be allowed to enjoy life.
He's being mentally strong right now.
It's a gateway drug.
For what? But
How do you?
he can have Chipotle?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he
So
No calorie, high protein.
He's in a calorie deficit. Oh, take his phone out.
I understand that.
Why is he controlling?
Because you know what? When I'm trying to get big, he's always yelling at me about stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
So then now when he's trying to get small, I'm like yelling at him about it.
Oh, you have
Eric, you can have half of that.
That's what I just said.
Smacking him.
Eric knows I smacked him.
Yeah.
Did you say that is like the proportion of Democrats and proportion of the US for Democrats? Wait, you want to say the proportion of the US?
At 8989.
Are you cutting too?
Wait,
Sorry. That's such a waste of chocolate.
That's fine.
Howdy.
It's more for me.
Proud of you.
See, I'll eat chocolate like a normal human being.
Eric's not a normal
just
human.
wait. Just wait.
Eric, that commitment will please replace the
Is
player.
this for that backyard fight?
Nah, I got a cancel.
Oh, you don't know
Every
that?
schedule.
Are you cutting too?
They have wrestling.
Wrestling is the worst sport.
Zero, why did you
Ever.
smurf you?
I'll eat college have one.
Calvin, how close are you to 28 right now?
I'm going to 20.
You're 20?
No, are you cutting too?
No, it's going to 20. We're going to 20.
Oh, you're going 20.
This is
What's your weight right now? Damn.
Looks like your mind's stronger.
I lost 7 pounds in 2 days.
It's either heroin or
It's
chocolate.
not healthy.
Heroin or chocolate.
And I have to lose
You
9
lost
by
7 pounds in 2 days.
I have to lose 9 by
That's so
Saturday.
hard.
Not healthy.
That's not good for
I
you.
lost 16 in 3 days.
So I'm waiting for, okay.
The last 8 was in
That's not what I'm doing.
a
I
day.
honestly don't think
So
it'd be like,
It looks like I was like
That's like starting or something.
I disagree that they should even allow people
always has to whenever he like.
There's these things called shirts, and they check like your height, weight,
Then make sure you're
and body fat percentage. And then it tells you how much you're allowed to lose like every week and
I
stuff.
lied about my height to that.
I said I was 5'4",
same.
and I said I was.
They wouldn't let me go 120.
Yeah, I said I was 5'5", and then they gave me 13% body
The
fat.
higher body fat percentage, the more you can lose. So
Yeah.
if you lie about your height, means you can lose more.
Yeah, but the hardest part is also certifying for hydration. So I put fake
Yeah.
pee.
We all got fake pee and
You guys did that?
yeah.
I stuck a Visine bottle in my crotch, and then I put it, and then I poured it in the bottle.
I used the same bottle.
Dude, and
They literally give you no salt. You just fill it with sink water.
Yeah, but then it's cold, Dumbo.
Like, you gotta mix it
I
here.
don't know if he's still used
So it's just contemplating everything.
That's why
Not everyone does it.
2 weeks. State is next week. What?
Yeah, he is such a bad. They shouldn't allow. Well, wait.
That's what the hydration box is for. To make sure you're not.
Oh, we lied about it.
But then I cut all the way down to 34. I weigh 150.
67, and
Oh
there's the 95. Yeah.
Wait, can you walk me to?
Well, that's 99. Well,
And
99.7. 99.7. This is 67.
So I'm trying to find star.
Sam,
Yeah.
how good is red?
Wait, no, did you dress so red? How's that from? What did you, what, points?
Yeah, this is.
How much?
for N, did you say 210 is greater
Beat
or
low.
equal to
Dude,
10?
they gave me the second worst seed, so I have to go to this one.
I'm third seed.
Constellation.
I did like.
Yeah.
I got third seed for.
Is this right?
Dude, are you serious?
Sam,
Yeah, I
Sam.
got the second worst seed.
What is it?
I don't know, I'm going against the second guy.
That's what I do.
Third, one third.
What do you think of chocolate?
This
No,
is
you cannot.
last year.
Also,
No, last unit.
we're getting low calorie alcohol from now on.
Very
Just no college.
Bro,
Dude, just get a book. Why did you came out with
yes, I was just yes. Zero carbs. Huh?
Gives us taste.
Okay, yeah.
Stop drinking tea.
Really
It's
important to like
so sugary and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's better than
Straight tequila. Your new diet is tequila.
I had to ask for help.
Straight tequila.
Yeah, just take the hard shit so you don't have to take
Oh,
much.
I know. You gotta take much still.
do the
Oh,
hangover.
and then I put some
Bro, 2 years ago, Jason pulled up with like a fucking bottle and like,
but I don't
it
put
was so funny. Like,
I'm on one.
Yeah, fair enough.
Straight on one.
I mean,
Let's go bougie tonight.
bro, I hate the bougie thing done on every song.
They just walked in with the bottle of wine. It was so good.
Bro, wine glasses sitting there. Stop.
Absolutely.
Wait,
Do
how?
the state
We should do that.
on the board.
They didn't want to go. Yo, let's bring one wine. Hello, morning.
Right in the middle.
You explained this. Yeah, but how?
That's what
99.
I'm not kidding. I just.
Wait, what?
How do you feel about wine?
I got this. Yeah.
Drink some wine.
Sorry.
I read my entire life.
Wine?
That helps.
Yes, I'm at work.
After, when you go home. I'm pretty sure wine does help.
I like you make a coffee.
No.
I was born
And then she was in slow. Alright.
Well, okay, now.
This part.
One time me and Noah tried doing your homework.
It shows that you know how to do it. But since it's 99%, that means only 1% left. So that means
We did this Tuesday.
Is it 210 over 500?
So if it's 95%, that leaves 2.5 on each side, so we do 97.5. So if you have 99 in the middle, what percent?
and that's just like, so that's
0.5.
like, it's like
0.5, so you're going to do 0.99.
if that makes sense. I'm
Are
using
you
All right.
And then there's, zero deviation is the same.
0 would be
Reverse norm 0.995. And then 0. Is it 2.57?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So it would be like.
I'm trying to find out.
did it before.
Yeah, I'm in there right now. Do you divide it by
Oh.
500?
Then you do, you do the center.
The little thing, you know,
Just
underneath
use
the.
no, if you choose till you do the center. So here's what
It's because it's 0.42. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what.
Alright.
You have minus 1 minus or times
You don't need
well,
to.
it's just saying both sides.
Yeah, you just need the positive. So it's 0.25 plus.
N is 500.
please.
She just.
Wait, tell me what you do.
Wait, was all that?
Okay.
That's what I got when it's so that it's.
Now you have to squirt it.
Divided by
Okay, Noah.
Did you get 0.022?
Oh. That's so
You use the wrong one.
Oh, what? Oh, I was just on the back.
Okay, so then you want to what? Stack and then pass. No, is it on
Noah's stating for you. He's always yelling.
Like, honey.
Shut up. I didn't even understand what you were talking
I
about.
can read his handwriting.
Dude, I don't know how to turn off caps lock, bro.
Unlike Nathan.
That's what
I've come to realize that even when I drive in the cars,
I would much rather be yelled at than not be able to.
Why did we write down d hat plus or minus d star times standard deviation of t?
That's the formula.
Oh.
That's what the calculator is doing for you.
Oh, my B.
Thank you. All right. Bianca is going to come plan.
Not today.
And sometimes it doesn't.
Where'd you keep my fortune? Then why'd you put that in your storms?
Because 95 is
It's fortune, that's right.
Is it second math?
Is it double?
two and a half.
No, where you put in the input, you find
Is it
the Z
nice?
star, you put in the, you put in like so. This, because you remember how like you have to add the tail. So if it's at 99%, how much is left on each side? Yes, and you have to add 99.
Obviously,
Wait.
So you have to include this tail.
Okay. So
Yeah, okay, so
yeah, that's right. Okay, so to find your Z star, you go to stat. No, you don't. Don't quote me. Go to bars.
Second bar.
Go to the second bars.
So
Yes.
yes,
Go to inverse norm. Yes.
to do this.
Thank you.
Okay, and then what's the area?
And then just go down.
For your Z star.
Are you looking for the confidence interval or
Yeah,
the
the
Z
confidence.
star?
So for the Z star, you need the confidence.
Oh, second step?
No, just
So
stat.
it's 99 plus the 0.5.
Oh, I see.
And then
You go to test. Okay.
Yeah. Stat, test.
And then one product is these.
You hear what Harry Napier did?
Whoa.
Whoa, so this is like, whoa. It's more than that.
We are.
Whoa, no.
Whoa.
All right. Jillian's gonna do the do. I love saying that.
Do the do.
She's gonna do the do.
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 Huh?
That's like my favorite thing to say as a teacher. Do. Do your work.
Somehow I get this.
I actually did that whole day by myself. Besides that little 995 thing. I have one C, dog.
Jackson's driven.
That's not
Not
I've
me.
been there.
They attached it to this.
No.
Right now. Because they couldn't afford the truck.
We went camping and Sam had to drive Allie and Joel to go to the place truck. But there was a road taxi and I realized.
You guys, that's so much work.
Yeah, but we had the bed was
The bed was full of
candy
like bedding and
supplies
stuff.
and shit.
Why are you doing it?
Thank you.
Nice job.
I just don't know how to find the, I don't know how to find the standard deviation.
I got it.
What's doing with her?
I had help from like the previous question, but I got it.
That's kind of why we did the previous one together and then you try. I do have a method to my madness.
Do you?
Usually. Not always.
Took a pause, right?
No.
Me too.
I feel so smart right now.
You are smart.
Yeah, that's a lot. Everyone's different handwriting.
I know. That was just.
What was the other one?
Those two. Such troublemakers.
Facts.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Shelley. All right. Questions. No questions? Okay. So, in your homework, it may ask you to construct and interpret a confidence interval. That's the state plan do conclude. Yes, sir.
So, with the inverse norm thing, the .995, can you demonstrate how to get that again?
why we use 0.995?
No, like how to get it.
Like in the calculator?
Well, yeah, because I know if you have center, you can use 0.997 and get that.
Does yours ask left, center, right?
No, mine doesn't. So I want to find out how to get that number again.
Like how you got to that.
Yeah. Like I know in theory how to do it, but
Because the
Let me explain. 99 is in the center, right? And to get that last 1%, you use 0.5 in each side, right? Then take that left one. Now you got 995.
I forgot to spread root because that was like making more
I was trying to make it more complicated than it was. Honestly.
How do we do that with teacher?
so 99%'s in
I
the
guess
middle,
that's fair.
I just, I mean, it's really going off.
which means you have 0.5%.
Bro, if I was a teacher, I'd be freaking.
Inverse norm is written to include everything.
Right.
So you have to do 99.5%.
No.
Okay.
That's a big question.
All right.
I don't know.
So
Sometimes I turn my brain off.
That's a good ending to the class right there.
no, it's not. You also have to know how to find the sample size. Okay? Yes, we have more than enough time. So it says sometimes, I don't have a voice to talk over people right now. Sometimes we want to choose our sample size so that we may estimate a proportion within a particular margin of error. So when that happens, you want to choose your sample size before we start sampling. Margin of error, remember, is the second half, the plus or minus part, so the Z star times your standard error, which really is Z star times the square root of p hat times 1 minus p hat divided by your sample size. Now, the problem here is that most of the time, if you haven't done your sample yet, you don't know what p hat is, because p hat comes from the sample. So there's two approaches. The first one is called the conservative approach, which is you just put 0.5 in for p hat. This maximizes your margin of error. And if you maximize your margin of error, that means you're going to end up taking a larger sample size. And larger sample size is never a bad thing. So, every year, I talk about this. I say, okay, if you want to find the sample size, you don't know p hat, put 0.5 in for p hat. Then I assign a homework problem where you have to find the sample size. It doesn't say anything about p hat, and kids come back and they're like, how do I do it? It's going to be in your homework. It's going to be on the test. Okay? Put 0.5 in there. The other approach, which technically is better, but is very rare, is if you can make a guess about the value of P based on a pilot study or some previous experience. So now I'm going to show you how to use the conservative method. Suppose we are interested in finding out the proportion of the population, you guys can tell this is an old example, that supports Bernie Sanders in the upcoming election. We plan a survey that will contact an SRS of voters in the country. We want to estimate P with 95% confidence and a margin of error no greater than 3%. How large of a sample do we need? So we just looked at margin of error comes from Z star times your standard error for P hat, which is square root of P hat times 1 minus P hat divided by N. We're told we want a margin of error no greater than 3%. So I'm going to put 0.03 for my margin of error, because remember we work with proportions, so we need to change our percents to decimals. So I have 0.03 equals, we're looking at 95% confidence, so what's our Z star? 1.96, thank you. I was looking for Maddie to give it to me, but it's okay. 1.96. You're not allowed to do that.
Wait, that's the Z star?
Yeah. 95% confidence. I promise. Absolutely. 95, not 99.
I thought we got the Z score from like the inverse.
It's all a
inverse
lie.
norm.
It's all been a test, but it's not.
If it's 95 in the middle, what do I put for the area, Sam?
975.
Okay. Type it into your calculator.
Is it just gonna be 1.96?
It's going to be 1.96.
Okay, my bad.
Okay. We don't know P hat. So we use the conservative approach. We're going to put 0.5 in for P hat. Then we leave N as N, because that's what we're solving for, the sample size. So then we get to use algebra skills. I know, right? We hardly ever do that in this class, but every once in a while it shows up. What's the first step?
No, you forgot something.
What did I forget?
The 1 minus.
What's 1 minus 0.5?
0.5.
At
Sorry.
least I'm engaged.
You are engaged. You have a point there. Okay, first step.
This is literally why I don't do anything. Just embarrass myself. Right?
It's okay, Sam.
Divide both sides by 1.96. I think Nate said it, right? Those cancel out. 0.03 divided by 1.96. Put it over here. So let's go with 0.0153. And that is equal to the square root of 0.5 times 0.5 divided by n. Next step. Why do you gotta mumble back there?
Square both sides.
Thanks, Eric. Square both sides. If we square both sides, the square root and the square cancel out. Now, even though I rounded here in my calculator, I'm just going to hit square so that I don't have rounding errors.
I don't understand what you mean.
Sorry, my interest is not just. My bad.
Are we not even this?
Sick
Can we
face.
lose?
Now, here, I'm going to put 0.0002. Honestly, if this is in your homework, it might be helpful to show the steps, or you could just do it all in the calculator and have your final answer at the end. Here, well, I might do it as a short answer question on your test, but for the most part, it's going to be multiple choice. You guys are in a complaining mood today.
I love multiple choice.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's
All right,
so
now
Gives me
what?
the opportunity to narrow down the answer.
Exactly. Now what?
Yeah.
Except I don't like something choices.
Multiply by
They all
n.
sound so similar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dude, if I say so, I answer.
I am being sarcastic.
Ah.
I heard I have a very sarcastic tone.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you guys all okay if I change 0.5 times 0.5 to
No.
0.25?
No.
Too bad.
Oh, okay, cool.
Why did you ask?
Yeah, why did you ask it?
To make sure you knew why I changed it to 0.25.
Is that just the answer?
How'd you
No, does it have n equals?
Oh.
No, I gotta divide
No, I'm
by
asking
this.
0.5 times 0.5.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wouldn't
No.
make up some random math.
Damn. No.
We are all the way to
Obviously, it's not the answer.
Those go away. N is, so I'm gonna take 0.25 divided by what my calculator has. So that I don't have rounding issues, I'm gonna hit second answer. And I get 1,067.111.
That's really high.
I feel like I did something wrong.
No way for yourself.
Also what I got.
Eric, I'm
It
serious.
just didn't seem right.
It's a lot of voters.
Your mom or your mom?
Now, I said most of the time this would be multiple choice. This is how they like to write the test questions for the AP exam. They'd ask, what sample size should you choose? And then they give these options.
If you choose the biggest one.
You choose the closest one.
You always choose C.
Oh. That's it. Oh, which one?
It'd be 6'5".
It'd be
B.
C.
BC.
Because it's closer to.
B.
C.
It's closer.
That's really
It's B or C.
It is really annoying.
Yes!
It's
How
C.
does that make sense?
You
It's
go,
only
Larger.
2.1
you
of
go
them.
with the closest but larger one.
I would have picked B.
Because if you go down, then your margin of error goes up. But if you go,
What if it's closer to the lower one? Do you still go with the upper one?
you still go with the,
Yeah.
it's got to be close to it, but larger. You cannot be close to it and smaller, or you won't get the correct margin of error. The minute you decrease your sample size, your margin of error would increase.
So if it was like 1066, you would still choose C.
Yeah. Yeah, it's annoying. I bet they write their questions that way. Nate,
Would there be a
Crack
scenario
the
where
code,
C is
everyone.
like
Crack the code.
1100 and you would choose 1100 over 1065?
Why
Yeah.
she grade my song
Wow,
succession,
okay.
but I haven't even done it yet.
I've never seen them go that far away,
Uh-huh.
but sometimes it'll be like 50 away from what you get. You go above it, but the one closest to it, that's bigger than your answer.
Will they ever put the same answer?
I suppose. Usually you have some sort of decimal. So if it like said 1,067 or 1,068, you go with 1,068 as your answer. Because otherwise you're getting rid of decimals and then you have issues. Yes, sir.
This formula on the formula sheet?
Yeah.
It's a formula.
Why don't we have a formula sheet?
Well, it's like,
Can you tell her?
first let me answer these.
Oh, sorry.
What would happen to the sample size if we wanted a smaller margin of error?
We would
Increase it.
You would increase your sample size.
Place.
Oh, that's good.
What if still the same thing. What would happen to our sample size if we wanted to do 99% confidence rather than 95? Yes.
The Z.
Well, Z, yes, your Z star would change. But what's going to happen to the sample size? It's going to increase.
I'm just gonna mark an arrow.
It's always increase. Increase that sample size. This is never a bad thing.
Yeah.
Now, what was your question? Oh, the formula sheet.
Yeah, why don't we
So
print
when
it out
I
for me?
first started teaching this, I would print the formula sheet of every test. It's like 5 pages. So I stopped doing it.
You should just give like students just like their own thingy, and then they just keep it forever. Instead of like printing it out on every test.
See, it's right there. And then there's this, which will
So if I printed that out on my own side, use it on the test.
So excited.
I also noticed that kids would